Should the agent be calling CLIs or MCP servers? This is an interesting debate happening among agent builders at the moment. And most of the takes I'm seeing are missing the actual point. Now, you probably have heard the criticism of MCPs. I have highlighted that here as well. They burn context, especially with bigger tool surfaces. So a lot of developers started experimenting with just letting their agents call CLIs directly. In this case, you don't need any schemas. You don't need any upfront tool loading. It is just text in and text out. And in a lot of cases, that actually worked better. But here's the thing. The MCP camp has a real counter. CLIs don't give you schema validation or automatic auth flows, or even discoverable tools, surfaces. And these guardrails actually matter once you are shipping to non-developers or running a fleet of agents you don't fully control. Okay, so both camps have real pain points. The question is going to be which one actually wins. Now, here's where most takes gets it wrong, in my opinion. If both sides have real arguments, the question itself is probably the wrong one. Because CLI versus MCP is not an architectural choice. I think it's more about a packaging choice. Now, let me break this down. So we actually need to look at what exactly happens underneath if you're using any of these surfaces. Whatever service you're calling, there is an engine in the middle doing the actual work. Let's say you want to retrieve data from a URL or bypass anti-bot or even like handle authentication. The CLI or MCP servers and now even skills are just a shell wrapped around this same engine. To think about CLI versus MCP, here is how I would frame it. The CLI is the developer surface for scripting, debugging, and running things in CI. The MCP is the agent loop surface for tool calls with schema. When you want the model to choose what to call mid-conversation. And now we also have skills, which is this new pattern, which does progressive disclosure. So it really takes care of the context bloat problem with MCPs. So essentially, we're talking about three different surfaces, which exposes the capabilities of the same engine. Okay, so in the rest of the video, let me show you how to use both. We're going to be focusing on CLIs and MCPs, but you want to think about these two things at two different stages. Now, in this video, we're going to use Bright Data as an example. So we're going to use their CLI for development, trying things out. That's going to be basically experimentation on the developer part. And then when you're ready to deploy, you switch to the MCP to wire that same engine to your agent. They're also the kind sponsors of today's video. So the goal of this video is to show you that CLI and MCPs are complementary, not competing surfaces. Okay, so the platform itself has different parts. There's the web unlocker for scraping, the SERP API for search engine, and a browser API for JavaScript heavy pages. There's also structured pipelines for over 40 different platforms and an MCP server for agents. And now they are introducing a CLI. The CLI is where we're going to be focusing on. It's brand new, shipped pretty recently, and gives you everything I just listed from a single command on the terminal. You can find the docs at docs.brightdata.com/CLI, and the code is open source on GitHub. Okay, so in the rest of the video, I want to show you how you can use these two surfaces together. So we're going to use the Bright Data CLI for initial experimentation, scripting, debugging, and then later on I'll show you how you can use the same tools with an MCP server by providing these to your agent. All right, so here is the Bright Data CLI. You actually get access to 5,000 requests per month, which I think is pretty generous. Now we're going to just use this command to install the CLI for us. Now, next we need to actually configure the CLI with our credentials. Now, if you have a Bright Data account, you can just use the login. This is going to automatically open a browser and log into your account. So here's how it looks like. Now, this is a CLI tool, which means you can really use all the different arguments. So for example, if you type help, this tells you all the different options that you have. Now you can use the same tool with your agent, which I'm going to show you later on. So you can log in, log out, you can scrap by providing a specific URL. There are already pre-existing pipeline for different websites like Amazon, Zillow, which can do some really complex structured retrievals. I'll show you a couple of examples of these. Now, if you want, you can also use this interactive wizard to set up authentication and defaults, right? Now, Bright Data not only gives you access to scraping data from web pages, but it also enables you access websites that are usually blocked by bot detection. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try to get some data from Macy's.com. So we're going to run this, and when we execute it, you get the access denied code, which means you can't scrape the data from this because on the server side, they are denying access. So here we can actually look at the start of the response, and you can see that it says access denied. Now you can use Bright Data to scrape data from Macy's.com without any issues. So using the CLI, I can just say Bright Data, and then the tool that I want to use is scrape. Then we're going to provide the web link. So in this case, I'm asking it to get the data from Macy's.com and write it into a markdown file. Now, when we run this, the tool is running right now. This is going to take some time. It has written all the output to Macy's.md, and we can actually open this up. You can see that it's not being blocked at all now. Now, this is a quick look at how you can use this tool, but let's do something interesting. So we're going to use the Bright Data CLI tool to search for something. So let's say, find me the best price for iPhone 16 Pro. All right, so this is my search query. And now if I want to limit, let's say the search to only US, I can do that. And we can use the pretty flag to just write everything to a JSON file. So now Bright Data is looking for the best price for iPhone 16, and it created this JSON file. Okay, so here's the data that we are getting, right? So these are Google search results, and these are, I think, different references or links. We can actually see that this one is from Amazon. And since we defined US as a country, it actually limits or filters out the location to be US, right? So you're not going to see other countries in the results. Now let's try to limit the country to Germany. This should write all the results to de.json. And in this case, we can actually see that it actually limited the results to Germany, right? So this gives you a really powerful way to experiment and see what type of data you get, right? So if you're a developer and building agentic systems, I would highly recommend to experiment with the CLI tools to get a feel of what exactly that specific tool is doing for you. All right, so here's one more example of something called pipelines that Bright Data ships in their CLI tool. And these are platform specific. So in this case, I'm using the Zillow property listing platform. And the idea here is that they basically created this whole pipeline that is going to do complex scraping information retrieval from these specific websites that have a very rich data set. So in this case, I provided a property location, and I'm asking it to extract all the information for me. Okay, so here's the extracted information. Initially, I was trying to index it by a wrong key, right? So this is the location, and it's just a random home that I picked up. Here's 2,000 square feet, built in 1999, and this is the Z estimate, right? And this is the listed price. Okay, so it's definitely out of my budget, but the CLI can give you a lot of details, right? Now, you don't really have to do any parsing on the data. It does it for you. Now, here's another example of another property. Now, if you can imagine, you can basically create something like real estate intelligence system on top of this, right? That your agent can use. All right, here's one more example of a built-in pipeline. This specifically is for Amazon, right? So you can search for specific products on Amazon and you get really well-structured data in return. So as a developer, you're going to use a tool like this to first figure out if the CLI that you're using has all the capabilities that you need or not. Okay, so say as a developer, you're happy with the tool experimentations that you did through the CLI. Now, the next step is to enable this tool in your agent. So one way of doing this is to give access to the CLI, or you could enable it to an MCP server. Now, in this case, I am going to add the Bright Data MCP server to my Claude code. You could use any other agent like Codex, even personal agents like Hermes or OpenClaw. You will need to get your Bright Data API key. It's free for 5,000 requests, so you don't need to pay anything. Now, in this case, we're going to start Claude. If you go to the MCP list, you can see that I have Bright Data with 5 different tools connected. Okay, so we can basically reuse the tools that we used previously. Now, by default, if you go to context, it's going to load all the different tools in these MCP servers, and this uses up a lot of context. So before even sending a single message, I have about 27,000 tokens, which is 3%. It's already being used. And the biggest problem is these MCP servers that are connected. But there's a way to actually select a specific tool if you want. I covered this in one of my previous videos. You can actually select tools by group or even individual tools, so you don't have to load everything into the context window. A link to that video is going to be in the video description. So if you follow the instructions in that video, we can substantially reduce these 10,000 tokens that is occupied by the MCP tool definitions right now. Now, with this agent, we can ask more open-ended questions. So for example, I'm asking it to compare these two listings, which is better deal per square foot, right? So it should ideally be able to use the Bright Data MCP server, or actually the Zello pipeline in this case, get the relevant detail and then reason on top of it. So right now it seems like it tried to use the normal web fetch and it failed because Zello doesn't allow normal web scraping. But now it's trying the Bright Data scraper instead, which is pretty awesome because it's able to retrieve actual information. So these are the two prices, and now it can reason on the data itself, right? So if you look at it, it says a better deal by raw square feet favors the Miranda by 8%. This one is, I think, the one that is more expensive, but since it's a much larger area, so the square feet actually comes down to be lower compared to the other one. But not only that, then it looks at the other location and it says that the overall tax bill is going to be almost 11,000 lower because of an inherited Prop 13 basis, right? So the agent is able to reason through what it's seeing, right? And this is where these MCP tools enables the agent to get most relevant data for the type of application you are working on. Now, coming back to the original premise, I think both CLI and MCP have their places, especially if you have user-facing application. MCP seems to be a better option for agents because they can validate the schema and provide proper information at runtime. Anyways, do let me know what you think. Do check out Bright Data. Link is going to be in the video description. Anyways, I hope you found this video useful. Thanks for watching. And as always, see you in the next one.